Germany is one of the most influential countries in Europe, both for its history and its economic and cultural development. Located at the heart of the continent, it has been the setting for decisive events in European and world history. Numerous medieval towns and villages have withstood the passage of time and the impact of wars. The Bavarian Alps stand out for their mountain landscapes, considered among the most spectacular in the world. In addition, the country is known for its high level of technical expertise and its ability to innovate. Today, we explore Germany from its major cities to its most remote and lesser-known places. Berchtesgaden National Park. It is located in the heart of the Bavarian Alps, near the border with Austria. To take in the area, the Eagle's Nest viewpoint rises above the landscape, built in 1938 for Adolf Hitler's 50th birthday. Serving as the gateway to the park is the town of Berchtesgaden, home of the Church of Maria Gurn, one of Germany's iconic landmarks. As you venture into the mountains, Lake Königssee comes into view, nestled between steep cliffs and considered one of the purest lakes in the country. Nearby lies the village of Schönau am Königssee, whose residents have traditionally lived off the region's pastures and forests. Since 1909, its boathouses have sheltered electric boats that glide across the lake's waters. Along the shoreline stands St. Bartholomew's Church, recognized by its red roofs and pointed towers. Continuing across the water and deeper into the mountains, in a remote setting, you'll find Übersee, a high-altitude lake. Because of its isolation, the area receives few visitors, and its waters are exceptionally clear. At the edge of the nature reserve lies Ramsau, where the landscape is completed by the presence of St. Sebastian's Church. Black Forest. Alongside the Rhine Valley, it forms an extensive mountain range covered in forests near France and Switzerland. Owing to its rugged terrain and the humid climate typical of Central Europe, dense banks of fog are common. The region features cold, shaded streams that flow through rocky areas, moss, and wooded slopes. Rivers plunge through narrow gorges and over rocky steps, creating waterfalls. Rather than being a single forest, it's an entire region of mountains, valleys, villages, and winding paths. Small settlements and rural communities dominate, closely tied to waterways and historic valleys. For travel, roads cross ridges, passes, and valleys, following a winding course. On the western edge of the Black Forest sits Giggenbach, in a transition zone between mountains and woodland. Thanks to its well-preserved medieval architecture, it has served as a setting for several film productions. Garmisch-Partenkirchen. In the state of Bavaria, very close to the Austrian border, this town lies in a wide alpine valley surrounded by high mountains. It hosted the 1936 Winter Olympics, making the first time Germany organized an event of this kind. During summer, it becomes a starting point for hiking and mountaineering, while in winter, it turns into a ski resort. The Partnach River, which originates in the nearby Alps, runs through this town alongside traditional Bavarian houses. The local economy depends heavily on tourism for much of the year, though long-standing traditions are still preserved. In the warmer months, livestock returned from high mountain pastures after feeding on fresh grass. At the beginning of August, the Heimatwochen takes place, celebrations dedicated to the traditions of the Bavarian Alps. Near the town, visitors can access the Partnach Gorge, formed by the erosion of the Partnach River over thousands of years. Water rushes through it with great force, especially in spring when melting snow increases the flow. Rottenburg op de Tauber. It preserves the appearance of a nearly intact medieval town, with walls, towers, fortified gates, and cobblestone streets. Following the 30 Years' War in the 17th century, it entered a period of decline that paradoxically allowed its medieval structure to remain largely unchanged. The market square is surrounded by timber-framed houses, Renaissance buildings, and colorful facades, maintaining the same layout it had in the Middle Ages. Next to the town hall stands the Rockstrickstube clock, where a historical scene is reenacted every hour. Between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Rottenburg attracted artists and travelers who settled in the city, captivated by its medieval atmosphere. Neuschwanstein Castle. Located in the Allgäu region, it rises above a rocky gorge, with slender towers and white stone walls. Walt Disney visited it during a trip to Europe and was so impressed that he used it as the model for the Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland. Construction began in 1869 when Ludwig II sought a private retreat to escape the political responsibilities of Munich. However, the king never saw it completed. 7 weeks after his death, the castle he had designed was opened to the public to help pay off the crown's debts. Moselle Valley. Situated between the regions of Rhineland-Palatinate and Saarland, this valley follows the winding course of the Moselle River from the French border to its mouth at the Rhine. Since Roman times, it has served as an important communication route and a hub for settlements. Vineyards cover the steepest slopes, taking advantage of the sun's exposure and the valley's microclimate for grape cultivation. This form of viticulture, documented since Roman times, is especially associated with Riesling, a white grape variety. Various castles appear throughout the valley, including Gondorf Castle, forming a system of visual control over the area. One of the towns in the region is Treben-Trachbach, which around 1900 became one of Europe's main wine trading centers. To the north lies Bielstein, a small village nestled between the river and vineyard-covered hillsides. About an hour's drive away is the town of Kochum, dominated by a fortress that once served as an imperial residence of the Hohenstaufen dynasty. Historic houses line the riverfront in a vertical arrangement, designed to make the most of limited space in a narrow valley. Allgäu Alps. In the state of Bavaria and along the border with Austria, they form a mountainous region at the northern edge of the Alps. A transition occurs here between rugged peaks and gentle alpine meadows, creating a highly diverse landscape within a relatively small area. At the heart of these mountains lies Oberstdorf, a major center for mountain tourism and winter sports. The Old Town Hall, now a museum, is painted with scenes depicting historical events and regional figures. Another notable village in the area is Fischen, which has maintained a rural identity centered on livestock farming. Almabtribe is one of the traditions celebrated each autumn, when cattle descend from high mountain pastures to the valleys. Cows are decorated with crowns and bells, marking the end of the alpine season upon their return. Fussen. This town is surrounded by a spectacular natural setting, with the Lech River flowing through it in a striking emerald green color. In the 16th century, it was the most important center for lute production in Europe. Its historic center is a maze of narrow cobblestone streets with pastel-colored facades and steeply pitched roofs. Overlooking the town from above is the High Castle, a Gothic fortress that seems to rise directly from the rock. It is considered the final stop on the famous Romantic Road, a route that reaches the Alps and marks the transition from historic towns to high mountain landscapes. Munich. For centuries, this city was the center of power in Bavaria, evolving from a small medieval settlement into a major capital. In Munich's center, Marienplatz served for centuries as the setting for markets, celebrations, and key decisions shaping Bavaria's future. On the town hall tower, mechanical figures reenact scenes from the 16th century. With its unmistakable twin towers, the cathedral has become Munich's main spiritual symbol. The Bavarian State Chancellery, located in the heart of the city, serves as the seat of government. Breaking away from the urban environment, the Isar River offers a natural landscape with clear cold waters of alpine origin. As it flows through the English Garden, the river forms a permanent artificial wave that allows surfing even in winter. On the river's eastern bank stands the Maximilianeum, home to the Bavarian State Parliament and a residence for scholarship students. On the outskirts of the center lies Nymphenburg Palace, built in the 17th century as a summer residence for Bavarian rulers. Berlin. In northeastern Germany, on the banks of the Spree River, it is the country's capital and a city shaped by continuous political and social transformations. Founded in the 13th century, it became the capital of Prussia and later of the German Empire in 1871. In 1961, the German Democratic Republic built the Berlin Wall to prevent the mass immigration of citizens to West Berlin. For nearly 30 years, it divided the city with watchtowers and control zones until its fall on November 9, 1989, a key moment in the end of the Communist bloc. The Brandenburg Gate, constructed between 1788 and 1791, stood for decades as a symbol of division, and after unification came to represent German unity. The Spree River crosses Berlin from southeast to northwest, having served for centuries as a central axis for transport, trade, and urban expansion. On Museum Island stands Berlin Cathedral, designed as the main church of Hohenzollern dynasty. The Reichstag, seat of the German parliament, suffered severe damage during the 1933 fire and World War II, and was completely renovated in the 1990s. The city's main park is the Tiergarten, functioning as a vast green lung with natural areas, monuments, and large recreational spaces. Within the park stands the Victory Column, inaugurated in 1873 to commemorate Prussian victories in several unification wars. Charlottenburg Palace, to the west of the city, is Berlin's largest historic palace and a prominent example of Prussian Baroque architecture. Lake Constance. At the southern edge of Germany, near Switzerland and Austria, it stretches out at the foot of the Alps as one of the largest bodies of water in Central Europe. Its vast size, spanning 63 kilometers or 39 miles in length, means that many crossings are made by boat, much like traveling between coastal ports. Lindau, a small town on the lake's eastern shore, features an historic center located on an island connected to the mainland by 2 bridges. At its harbor stands a lighthouse and a Bavarian lion, a stone sculpture symbolizing Bavaria's presence in the region. Mainau Island lies in the northwestern part of the lake, designed as a botanical garden filled with exotic trees. Nearby is Meersburg, a small town with houses overlooking the water. In the area known as Untersee is Reichenau, an island with around 5,000 inhabitants. Its mild climate supports the cultivation of vegetables and crops that are common in nearby regions. Frankfurt. In the state of Hesse, crossed by the Main River, is one of Germany's most influential cities due to its historic and economic importance. Between 1562 and 1792, several emperors of the Holy Roman Empire were crowned here, reinforcing its political significance. Today it is Germany's main financial center and one of Europe's key hubs, home to institutions such as the European Central Bank and the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Romerberg Square has been the historic heart of the city for centuries, surrounded by buildings reconstructed after the war. At the center of the square, the Fountain of Justice symbolizes civic autonomy and the rule of law since the Renaissance. St. Bartholomew's Cathedral is the city's main religious site, where imperial elections and coronations took place. The Eisenersteg footbridge crosses the main river, linking the old town with the Sachsenhausen district. Couples attach padlocks here as a symbol of lasting commitment. The old opera house was heavily damaged during World War II and remained in ruins for decades until its reconstruction in 1981. On a nearby hill rises Burg Epstein Castle, dating back to the 13th century, which once served as a residence of an influential noble family. Freiburg im Breisgau. At the foot of the Black Forest, it developed from the Middle Ages as a city tied both to trade and its strategic position near the Rhine Valley. Over time, it became an intellectual center following the founding of its university in 1457. Freiburg Cathedral, built between the 13th and 16th centuries, features a tower described by historian Jacob Burckhardt as the most beautiful tower in Christendom. Throughout the city streets, you can see the Bachl, small water channels that have run through the historic center since the Middle Ages. Originally, they were used for water supply and fire prevention, and today they have become a distinct feature of the city. Saxon-Switzerland National Park. Near the border with the Czech Republic, it stretched along the upper valley of the Elbe River. This landscape belonged to a region formed millions of years ago, characterized by vertical rock formations and deep gorges. The relatively soft rock fractures into vertical shapes, creating steep cliffs, towers, and spires. The Basti Bridge is the park's most iconic and visited landmark. Built of stone in 1851, it connects several rock spires through arches that blend seamlessly into the surroundings. Magdeburg. Situated on the banks of the Elbe River, it combines a medieval and imperial past with a modern urban image. The city's major rise came in the 10th century, when King Otto I made it one of his favorite centers of power. Rather than a classic medieval town, it is a place that blends roles as a regional capital, university city, and cultural hub. The Green Citadel is one of Magdeburg's most famous buildings, conceived as a mix of residences, shops, a hotel, cafes, and offices. The Millennium Tower, located in Elbauen Park, was built in 1999 for a gardening exhibition. The Magdeburg Water Bridge is one of the city's great engineering achievements, considered the longest navigable aqueduct in Europe. Its purpose is to connect two major canals, the Elbe Havel Canal and the Midland Canal, facilitating river transport. Bacharach. In the state of Rhineland-Palatinate, this town was for centuries an important center of medieval wine trade, driven by its location along the Rhine River. From here, barrels were shipped downstream to cities like Cologne and even the Netherlands. The historic center preserves a network of narrow streets with timber-framed houses dating from the 16th to the 18th centuries. Above the town stands the ruins of Stockleck Castle, built in the 12th century to oversee traffic along the Rhine and surrounding trade routes. After its destruction in 1689, it was rebuilt and now functions as a youth hostel. Monschau. Very close to the Belgian border, this small town is surrounded by forested hills in the Eifel region. It developed as a craft and trade center, reaching particular prosperity in the 18th and 19th centuries thanks to textile production. The Ruhr River runs through the center of the town, with many houses located right along the water. In an elevated position stands the Monschau Castle, which originally controlled trade routes and today hosts events and celebrations. Passau. Very close to the Austrian border, it is known as the City of Three Rivers, located at the confluence of the Danube, Inn, and Ilse. At the meeting point of these rivers, the different watercolors can be clearly distinguished before they merge. It serves as a key point on the Danube navigation routes and on tourist itineraries towards Central and Eastern Europe. After a major fire in 1662, the reconstruction of Passau involved architects from northern Italy, resulting in the predominance of Italian Baroque style. Bavarian Forest National Park. In eastern Lower Bavaria, near the Czech border, it covers a vast mountainous strip of woodland. Established in 1970 as Germany's first national park, it now forms part of one of the largest continuous forest areas in Central Europe. Its guiding principle is to let nature take its own course, which explains why in many areas dead trees are not removed and the forest is left unmanaged. The Eurasian lynx is one of the mammal species living in the park, elusive and difficult to spot. Wolves have disappeared due to human persecution, but they are gradually returning to the region. The European bison, the largest land mammal in Europe, has also been reintroduced through controlled conservation programs. Spreewald. It is a vast plain crossed by an intricate network of channels formed by the Spree River. The landscape consists of wet forests, floodplain meadows, and more than 300 navigable canals. These features developed from geological processes after the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, when melting ice created a wetland crossed by multiple waterways. Many areas are accessible only by water, and small villages are connected by boats. In some of them, mail was once delivered by boat, adapting to a region where land routes were scarce. Kaub. This village lies on a narrow strip between the Middle Rhine Valley and slopes covered with vineyards. Both the road and the railway follow the course of the Rhine, adapting to the limited available space. Above the top rises Gutenfels Castle, built in the 13th century on top of a hill. Opposite Kaub, on a small island in the middle of the river, stands Felsengrafenstein Castle. Constructed in the 14th century, its shape resembles a stone ship and was used as a toll station to control river traffic. Würzburg. It is the capital of Lower Franconia in Bavaria and the official starting point of Germany's famous Romantic Road. The city is divided by the main river. On one side lies the old town, filled with churches and palaces with tall spires. On the other, hills covered with vineyards. For centuries, Würzburg was not ruled by kings, but by bishops who held the political power of princes. This explains why there are so many churches, though none dominates like St. Kilian's Cathedral, the center of the city's spiritual authority. A short walk leads to the Wolfsburg residence, one of the most important palaces in Europe. Commissioned by the Prince Bishops, it blends elements of Baroque, Rococo, and neoclassical styles. Looking upward from the urban center, Marienburg Fortress appears on the hill across the main river. It served as the residence of the Prince Bishops for nearly 500 years, from 1253 until 1799, when construction of the palace began. Freudenberg. It is the town founded in the 15th century in a planned layout under the control of the Counts of Nassau. It forms part of the German Timber Frame Road, a tourist route that connects some of the best preserved towns in this architectural style. The timber houses are painted white with black beams, arranged in an orderly pattern along the hillside. Much of it was rebuilt after a major fire in 1666, which explains the architectural uniformity seen today. Landsberg am Lech. On the banks of the Lech River, alongside the historic route connecting Augsburg with the Alps, it developed as an important commercial and defensive center. During the Middle Ages, the town prospered through the salt trade, with goods transported from the south into the interior of Bavaria. For centuries, the bridge over the Lech River was the key feature that gave rise to the town, as it allowed control over trade between the north and south of the region. In front of the historic center, the river flows in parallel levels, the result of a steep dam designed to reduce the strength of the current. Heligoland. In the North Sea, it is a small archipelago made up of two main islands, the rocky island of Heligoland and the low sandy island of Dune. It was Danish territory until 1807, then came under British control during the Napoleonic Wars, and in 1890 was ceded to the German Empire in exchange for Zanzibar. The population, around 1,300 inhabitants, lives under conditions shaped by isolation, maritime climate, and an economy based on tourism and fishing. On the main island, a large colony of gannets is concentrated along the cliffs. Each spring, they return to breed, building nests on rocky ledges. On the nearby island of Dune, lower and sandy, colonies of seals can be seen resting on its beaches. Thuringian Forest. In the state of Thuringia in central Germany, It stretches as an elongated mountain range covered with dense forests and conifers and beech trees. For centuries, it has functioned as both a natural barrier and an ecological corridor between the north and south of the country. Its dense woods and enclosed atmosphere inspired German folk tales and legends. In an area where the forest begins to open towards the Saale River Valley lies Rudolstadt. The Saale River has been essential to the city's growth, serving as a communication route and shaping its urban landscape. In an elevated position stands Heidelberg Castle, where museums and collections dedicated to courtly life are preserved. Erfurt. It is the capital of the state of Thuringia and one of the best preserved medieval cities in the country. Its streets, now crossed by trams, are lined with timber houses and the bourgeoisie buildings several centuries old. The Gura River flows through the historic center, splitting into several branches that form canals and small tree-covered islands. On the Merchant's Bridge, a medieval structure, colorful houses were built and are still inhabited today. Erfurt Cathedral, located on top of a hill, stands out for its large size, monumental staircase, and medieval stained glass. On Petersburg Hill rises a 17th century Baroque fortress, featuring a star-shaped defensive system and St. Peter's Church within its walls. Ingolstadt. Historically known as the Schanze, it was for centuries a fortified city with walls so strong that it was nearly impregnable. Its location along the Danube River made it a particularly well-protected military stronghold in southern Germany. Older houses feature stepped gables, a typical Bavarian style that creates a skyline full of sharp, pointed shapes. Construction of the cathedral began in 1425, lasted for several decades, and resulted in a large building with a wide and luminous nave. Right beside the Danube stands the New Castle, which today houses a valuable collection of weapons, flags, and uniforms. Nuremberg. It has evolved from being the center of the Holy Roman Empire to re-emerging as the city of human rights. The Pegnitz River runs through the entire Old Town, forming a maze of canals and wooden bridges that connect different neighborhoods. After being reduced to rubble in 1945, Nuremberg was chosen as the site of the Nuremberg Trials, where the foundations of modern international law were established. At the city center lies Hauptmarkt Square, where kings once held their assemblies. In the same location stands the Schroner Brunnen, a golden tower decorated with figures representing notable people of the time. The Imperial Castle, perched on a rocky outcrop, rises above the city, offering panoramic views of its characteristic rooftops. Lübeck. Near the Baltic Sea and crossed by the Trave River, it is known as the Queen of the Baltic for having been the undisputed capital of the Hanseatic League for centuries. That prosperity left a visible mark on its merchants' houses and churches, although the city also suffered severe damage during the bombings of 1942. Among its symbols is the Holstein Gate, built in 1478 as part of the defensive system. The amphibian bus is one way to explore the city, an amphibious bus that travels through the streets and then enters the water to continue the route along the river. Sankt Goar. It is a village nestled in the Middle Rhine Valley, named after the hermit Saint Goar of Aquitaine, who moved to the area to work as a missionary. For centuries, local lords collected tolls from ships passing through this stretch of the river, a practice that played a key role in the town's economy. Across the Rhine lies Sankt Gorshausen, at the base of steep slopes covered with vineyards. Katz Castle stands on a hill, built around 1371 by the Counts of Katzenelnbogen for defensive purposes. Rostock. During the 14th century, it was a prosperous city thanks to maritime trade and its strategic position on the Baltic Sea. Today it blends its port tradition with a strong university presence and a connection to the sea through the coastal district of Warnemünde. Its medieval structure developed from several separate settlements, Old Town, Middle Town, and New Town, that eventually merged in 1265. The so-called Stone Gate served for centuries as one of Rostock's main entrances, a Renaissance structure integrated into the city walls. Rostock Standenhaus was once the parliamentary building and since 1992 has housed the higher regional court. The New Market was the city's main economic center in the Middle Ages and the residence of wealthy families. Here stands Rostock's Town Hall, recognized for its 7 towers. Göttingen. This city in Lower Saxony stands out for its academic character, with a university founded in 1737, associated with more than 40 Nobel Prize winners. Its history dates back to the Middle Ages, though its decisive development came in 1737 with the founding of the University of Göttingen by George II of Great Britain. The market square is surrounded by historic buildings such as the Old Town Hall and period homes. The Goose Girl Fountain depicts a young peasant woman accompanied by geese, inspired by traditional rural themes. Begun in the 13th century, St. John's Church is recognizable for its 2 uneven towers. The German Theater is another of the city's main buildings, maintaining a program focused on both classical and contemporary plays. Hanover. Capital of Lower Saxony, it has a modern character and abundant green spaces. The Rhine River runs through the city and has shaped its development since its origins, serving as both a natural and economic axis. The market square has been Hanover's commercial and social center for centuries, maintaining that role today. The historic center was partially rebuilt after the war, preserving some original buildings while recreating others on traditional models. On the outskirts of the city lie the Herrenhausen Gardens, once part of the residence of Hanover's rulers. Heidelberg. Along the Neckar River, it sits among forested hills in the upper Rhine Valley. The old bridge crosses the river, built in stone in the late 18th century after a previous crossing was destroyed by floods and wars. In 1386, its university was founded, the oldest in Germany, cementing its role as an intellectual center. French troops devastated the city during the 9 Years' War, yet it was later rebuilt and remained largely untouched during World War II. The Heidelberg Funicular, which began operating in 1890, connects the urban area with high forested zones, still using historic carriages. From a natural terrace above the old town, Heidelberg Castle overlooks the city. Partially destroyed by wars and lightning in 1764, it was never fully rebuilt, which is why it retains the appearance of a grand monumental ruin. Schliersee. It is an alpine village in Upper Bavaria, in the south of the country, closely linked to the lake of the same name. It has the typical character of many Bavarian mountain towns, with historic churches, traditional houses, hotels, and inns. During the winter months, snow covers the landscape, blanketing rooftops and freezing the lake. In nearby mountains, the peaks appear snow-covered while the slopes reveal trails and paths used by skiers and hikers. Bingen. At the confluence of the Rhine and Nahe rivers, it was established in Roman times as a fortified settlement under the name Bingium. The town was part of a defensive system, with fortifications designed to protect the border of the Roman Empire. The old town preserves traces of its medieval past, with narrow streets and buildings adapted to the terrain along the Rhine. The Mouse Tower, located on a small island opposite the town, was built in the 14th century as a point for surveillance and control of river traffic. Ansbach. It is the capital of Middle Franconia, located southwest of Nuremberg along the Rezat River. Founded in 748 as a Benedictine monastery, it grew over the centuries into a significant urban center. Its historic center features soft-toned Baroque facades, spacious squares, and church towers that evoke an old engraving. Its small size allows it to maintain a calm daily life, with orderly streets, moderate traffic, and a very local atmosphere. Jena. In eastern Germany, it is a modern university city with a strong scientific, intellectual, and technological identity. It is surrounded by hills and geological formations of the Saale River Valley, which have shaped its urban expansion. It has medieval origins, but its development gained momentum with the founding of the University of Jena in 1558, turning it into an academic reference. Some of the most influential thinkers in German history, such as Hegel, Fichte, and Schelling, once gathered here. What stands out is that this occurred in a relatively small city, showing that size does not always determine cultural importance. Marburg. It's one of Germany's oldest university towns, known for its hosting the world's first Protestant university in 1527. Since then, despite its size, it has attracted doctors, philosophers, and scientists, establishing itself as a small yet influential center of knowledge. The historic center, clearly medieval, stretches along a hillside with narrow cobblestone streets and steep inclines. Crowning the town is Marburg Castle, a medieval fortress from the 11th century, later expanded to serve as a residence for regional princes. Koblenz. It occupies the point where the Rhine and the Moselle rivers meet, a position that has shaped its entire history. The two great rivers converge at the Duschexeck, where a large statue of Emperor Wilhelm I stands. Its age, with more than 2,000 years of history, is reflected in a mix of medieval church remains, Baroque architecture, and modern engineering works. The Koblenz cable car connects the Rhine riverbank with Ehrenbreitstein Fortress, located at the opposite side of the great height above the city. It's one of the largest preserved fortifications in Europe, built in the 19th century by Prussia as part of a strategic Rhine defensive system. Eifel National Park. In the west of the country, it is a mountainous region of gentle relief, formed by ancient volcanic massives and dense forests. Wind farms are integrated into open areas where elevations allow the steady regional winds to be harnessed. The Ruhr Dam is one of the park's key infrastructures designed to regulate the river's flow and prevent flooding in lower areas. It created the artificial Lake Ruhrsee, with branches extending into the low mountains. On the shores of the lake lies Wolfesbach, in a forested area that slopes down toward the water. On a rocky formation, at the edge of the park stands Nedigen Castle, founded in the 12th century by the Counts of Jülich. Dresden. Capital of the state of Saxony, it is known for the richness of its architecture and art collections, earning it the nickname Florence on the Elbe. The historic center located along the Elbe River brings together buildings largely reconstructed while preserving the pre-war urban layout. Under the rule of Augustus the Strong and his son, Dresden became one of Europe's most refined courts, renowned for its art, music, and architecture. Dresden Cathedral stands out from Saxony's predominantly Protestant tradition, as it was conceived as a Catholic court church. Neumarkt Square, centered around the Frauenkirche, is the city's main square, almost completely destroyed in 1945 and later rebuilt following its original design. Cottbus. It is located in the historic region of Lusatia, known for its strong Slavic cultural heritage. Over time, it developed into an important regional center, driven by industrialization linked to lignite mining. It is one of the sunniest cities in Germany, with an annual average higher than that of many regions in the country. Branitz Park, on the outskirts of the city, was transformed starting in 1846 into a vast English-style landscape. At the heart of the grounds lies what is known as the Pyramid Plain. A pyramid made of earth and vegetation was built as a tribute to the eastern travels of the park's designer, Hermann Furst von Puckler. In the middle of an artificial lake, there is also a water pyramid, constructed as the tomb of von Puckler, who was buried here in 1871. Bremen. In northwest Germany, along the Weser River, it is part of the historic commercial sphere of Northern Europe. Its relationship with the Weser was crucial, as it connected the city to the North Sea and major trade routes. Thanks to this, by the 14th century, it had become a key city within the Hanseatic League, a powerful trading network in Northern Europe. The market square forms the historic heart of the city and continues to host major events such as the Christmas market. Here stand the town hall, blending Gothic and Renaissance styles, and St. Peter's Cathedral, which combines Romanesque and Gothic elements. Osnabrück. In the state of Lower Saxony, the city was founded in the year 780 by the Order of Charlemagne as a religious center. It is known as the City of Peace due to its role in the signing of the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which marked the end of the 30 Years' War. Built between 1668 and 1683, Osnabrück Castle served as a Baroque residence for prince bishops and now forms part of the University of Osnabrück. St. Peter's Cathedral, consecrated in 785 following the creation of the bishopric by Charlemagne, combines Romanesque elements with later Gothic additions. In southern Germany, in the state of Baden-Württemberg and on the banks of the Danube River, it was a strategic hub between Central Europe and the southern part of the continent. The historic center is concentrated around the Fisherman's Quarter, where a network of narrow canals runs through cobblestone streets. Timber-framed houses, many dating from 15th and 16th centuries, lean slightly toward the water due to ground settlement. Construction of Ulm Minster began in 1377, and it can hold more than 20,000 people, making it one of the largest Protestant churches in Europe. The town hall stands out for its richly decorated facade and its astronomical tower, to which a clock was added during the Renaissance and still operates today. Oberwesel. In the Middle Rhine during the Middle Ages, its location made it a key point along one of the most contested routes in Western Europe. Like other towns in the area, its prosperity was closely tied to the wine trade and river traffic along the Rhine. Its streets preserve their original layout, with old houses and religious buildings reflecting its prosperous past. The so-called Gold Tower made it possible to monitor both the city walls and river traffic on the Rhine. The Church of Our Lady also served as a defensive role, evident of its thick walls, towers, and elevated position. Overlooking the town from above, Schönberg Castle now operates as a hotel. Etal. It is a small Bavarian village with a peaceful atmosphere, surrounded by forests and mountains. A visit here conveys a calm, reflective mood, almost contemplative, very different from the tourist pace of other Bavarian towns. Etal's history is closely tied to its monastery, founded in 1330 by Emperor Ludwig IV of Bavaria, and associated with religious pilgrimage ever since. It is in the early years. It hosted a dual community of monks and nuns, as well as connections with the Teutonic Knights, a Christian military order. Friedrichstadt. In the state of Schleswig-Holstein, in the north of the country, it was founded in 1621 by Duke Frederick III as a refuge for persecuted religious communities. Its development was based on trade and its strategic river location, although it never reached the expected level of economic growth. The historic center maintains a geometric urban layout inspired by 17th century Dutch cities, with straight streets and clearly defined plots. Canals run through the town, forming a navigable network connected to surrounding rivers, designed for both transport and land drainage. Leipzig. Since the Middle Ages, it stood out as a trade and fair city, eventually becoming one of the country's major cultural and musical centers. The city features wide avenues, open spaces, and a blend of historic buildings with modern reconstructions. For centuries, it was one of Central Europe's leading commercial cities, as well as an important publishing and university hub. The market square has long been the civic and commercial heart, highlighted by the Old Town Hall, built between 1856 and 1857 in Renaissance style. In the modern center, the main square is Augustusplatz, where the futuristic building of Leipzig University stands out. On the outskirts of the city lies the Monument to the Battle of the Nations, inaugurated in 1913 to commemorate the centenary of Napoleon's major defeat at Leipzig. Boppard. Within the Middle Rhine Valley, this small town sits on a wide bend in a river known as the Rhine Loop, a pronounced meander. Vineyard-covered slopes and rock formations guide the course of the Rhine in a setting that has historically supported trade. The old town preserves significant remains of its Roman and medieval past, with streets lined by buildings from different periods. The Boppard chairlift rises from the Rhine riverbank to the Vierseenblik viewpoint, offering a full view of the river's sweeping bend. Hohenzollern Castle. It stands atop Mount Hohenzollern in southwestern Germany, serving both defensive and symbolic purposes. A first fortress was built in 1601, destroyed in 1423, and later another was constructed in the 15th century, which eventually fell into decline. The current castle is the result of a reconstruction began in 1850 by order of King Frederick William IV of Prussia as a historical restoration project. On foggy days, the castle appears to emerge from the clouds, enhancing its image as a legendary structure. Tübingen. This university town stretches along the Neckar River, set in a landscape of gentle hills and Swabian forests. Since the founding of the University of Tübingen in 1477 by Count Eberhard V, the city became a major intellectual center in southern Germany. Despite its small size, a large portion of its population consists of students, giving it a lively and youthful atmosphere. Timber-framed houses with narrow facades adapt to the uneven terrain, descending toward the Neckar River. Kiel. It developed around a large fjord that cuts into the Baltic Sea coastline. In the 19th century, it gained great importance as a naval base of the German Empire and was heavily bombed during World War II. The port of Kiel is one of the busiest in the Baltic Sea, playing a strategic role both commercially and militarily, as a base for the German Navy. The Kiel Canal, opened in 1895, is a key piece of infrastructure that connects to the North Sea. Its construction responded to both commercial and military interests, and it remains essential for international maritime traffic today. Hail. In Saxony-Anhalt, it became established as a city built on salt production. For centuries, salt was so important that specialized workers formed a close community with their own traditions. Hales Market Square is recognizable for its 5 towers, belonging to different churches, earning it the nickname the City of 5 Towers. The Saale River runs through the city and has long served as a vital route for trade and connection with other regions. Giebelstein Castle rises on a hill beside the river, where it once functioned as a fortress controlling local trade routes. Gilsenkirchen. In the heart of the rural region, the city presents an industrial landscape with wide avenues, residential neighborhoods, and former factories. Its history changed completely in the 19th century, when coal mining transformed a group of small settlements into a major industrial center. The city center is dominated by broad streets and squares, along with some churches and buildings that survived wartime destruction. In Nordstern Park stands the Vogenbroek, a symbol of urban transformation built over a former mining site. Aachen. It was the favorite city of Emperor Charlemagne, who made it the capital of his vast empire more than 1,200 years ago. Its most famous landmark is the cathedral, begun around the year 792 by order of Charlemagne. Inspired by Byzantine models and later expanded with Gothic elements, it became an architectural model for medieval Europe. Inside, it houses Charlemagne's throne and tomb, making it for centuries a place of royal coronations. A short distance away stands the town hall, a castle-like building overlooking the main square, with a statue of Charlemagne honoring the city's founder. In winter, its famous Christmas market fills the center with the aroma of printen, a spiced pastry whose secret recipe has been preserved for centuries. Tegernsee. Located south of Munich, this town sits beside the lake of the same name, in an alpine setting of gentle hills and green meadows. It originated around a Benedictine monastery founded in the year 746, which for centuries served as an important religious and cultural center. It became a destination for Munich's aristocracy and bourgeoisie, who built villas and summer residences in the area. Thanks to strict environmental protection measures, its waters are among the cleanest in Germany and suitable for swimming. In an elevated position above the lake stands the Reiterstein Chapel. Built in 1863 in honor of the Virgin Mary, it can only be reached by walking along forest trails. Schwerin. In northeastern Germany, within Mecklenburg, western Pomerania, this city is spread across several lakes. Schwerin stands out for the density of monumental heritage it holds for a city of its size. It preserves churches, museums, government buildings, and former courtly spaces that reflect its past ties to the nobility. After being inhabited by Slavic peoples, it was conquered, colonized, and reorganized by Germanic feudal lords in the 12th century. Schwerin Castle, resembling a fairy tale palace, now serves as the seat of the regional parliament. Fehmarn Island. In the Baltic Sea, near the Danish island of Lolland, it is Germany's third largest island. Since 1963, the Fehmarn Sound Bridge has connected the island to the mainland, serving as the main route for both road and rail traffic. Along long stretches of coastline, sandy beaches alternate with rocky shores. With around 2,000 hours of sunshine per year, it is one of the sunniest destinations in Germany, which has boosted its tourism development. Rudesheim. In the state of Hesse, it is a town known for its steeply sloped vineyards. These terraces, cultivated for centuries, produce white wines such as Riesling, well adapted to the cool climate of the Rhine Valley. The historic center is made up of cobblestone alleys, where the facades of traditional houses are decorated with flowers and climbing plants. Eibingen Abbey is located on a hill to the west, slightly elevated above the town. Wuppertal. It emerged in 1929 from the merger of several industrial towns in the Wupper River Valley, forming a city nestled between hills. It has the highest number of stairways in Germany, with around 500 sets connecting neighborhoods to the center. The core of activity lies in the Iberfield district, which since the 19th century has served as the commercial and financial engine of the region. What truly sets Wuppertal apart, however, is its unique transportation system, the Wuppertal Suspension Railway. This suspended railway runs for much of its route above the Wupper River, hanging from an elevated metal structure adapted to the narrow valley. It is one of the oldest suspended transport systems in the world still in operation, running continuously since 1901. Hildesheim. In the state of Lower Saxony, this city lies in a transition zone between the northern German plains and the first mountainous elevations of the Harz Range. In the year 815, Emperor Louis the Pious founded his bishopric here, making the beginning of its development as a religious center. During the Middle Ages, it prospered as both a religious and commercial city, and its architectural heritage became highly significant. Although 90% of its center was destroyed in 1945, many of its buildings were reconstructed decades later using traditional plans and techniques. Rügen. In the Baltic Sea, it is Germany's largest island, with a landscape made up of a complex network of peninsulas, bays, and inland lagoons. It offers a varied environment, with sandy beaches along the coast and small villages scattered inland. In the northeast of the island lies Jasmine National Park, known for its chalk cliffs that contrast with the blue of the Baltic and green of the forests. They originate from marine deposits formed millions of years ago, shaped over time by the action of wind and water. Potsdam. In the state of Brandenburg, near Berlin, it developed as a palace city closely tied to the Prussian monarchy. Its identity was shaped by the kings of Prussia, who transformed it during the 17th and 18th centuries into a courtly residence surrounded by gardens and monuments. The Nauner Gate, built in 1755, was commissioned by Frederick II as part of the city's monumental entrance system. Erected in 1770, Potsdam-Brandenburg Gate predates the famous Berlin Gate and was designed to celebrate Prussian victory in the 7 Years' War. On the outskirts of the old town lies Sensuki Palace, set within a park of terraced vineyards and gardens, considered a key example of German Rococo. Nearby within the same park stands the new palace, larger and more monumental, conceived as a display of power and stability. In the same area is the Orangery Palace, inspired by Italian Renaissance architecture. Baden-Baden. At the foot of the Black Forest and near the Rhine River, this town traces its origins back to Roman times. Its location in a privileged natural setting has been key to its reputation as a spa destination for centuries. During the 19th century, it reached its peak, becoming an exclusive resort frequented by aristocrats and artists. It has traditionally been an international meeting point, attracting visitors from Russia, France, England, and beyond, giving it a cosmopolitan character. Schiltach. It is located in the heart of the Black Forest, at the point where the Kinzig and the Schiltach rivers meet. Since the Middle Ages, it has been a small craft and trading center, linked to forestry and the Kinzig River as a transport route. The narrow valley where the town sits leads to construction on slopes and careful use of space between the river and the hillside. Münster. Between the plains of the northern Rhine-Westphalia and the ancient trade routes, it emerges as a city where centuries of history coexist with a calm atmosphere. In the year 1793, Charlemagne founded it as a religious center, and in 1648 it gained great importance as the site where the Peace of Westphalia was signed, ending the 30 Years' War. The agreement was signed in Münster's Town Hall, a Gothic-style building with a distinctive tall, stepped upper facade. Rising above the historic center, St. Lamberti's Tower stands out with its slender Gothic structure dominating the skyline. Sylt. Off the North Sea coast, it is an elongated island characterized by dunes, shrubs, and long stretches of land. It is connected to the mainland by the Hindenburg Dam, a railway causeway opened in 1927. To reach the island, travelers can take a train from cities like Hamburg or transport their own vehicles via special train services. For centuries, it was home to fishermen, sailors, and rural communities, but over time it developed into a popular vacation destination. The southern tip of Sylt is occupied by the village of Hornum, surrounded by water on several sides in a wind-exposed area. Traditional houses feature steep thatched roofs, designed to withstand North Sea storms and efficiently drain rainwater. Its beaches are wide, shaped by strong waves, and protected by dunes that act as a natural barrier against the sea. On Sylt, coastal erosion has long been a persistent issue, leading to decades of artificial sand replenishment to preserve its beaches. Additionally, concrete blocks are placed along the shoreline to reduce the impact of the sea and protect the coast. Hamburg. In northern Germany, near where the Elbe River flows into the North Sea, it is one of Europe's major port cities. Since its origins in the 9th century under Carolingian rule, its harbor has driven its growth, making it one of the wealthiest and most influential cities in the country. Hamburg's historic center reflects a blend of reconstruction and preservation, as much of it was destroyed during World War II. Canals connect historic areas, commercial zones, and residential neighborhoods. The city has around 2,500 bridges, more than cities like Venice or Amsterdam. Within the new Hafen City district, located in Hamburg's former port area, the Elbphilharmonia stands with its wave-like architecture inspired by sails and the sea. Düsseldorf. Thanks to its location along the Rhine and its proximity to cities like Cologne and Essen, it has established itself as an economic and administrative hub. Today, it's one of the country's leading economic centers, known for its role in fashion, international trade fairs, and the financial sector. Dusseldorf's central area combines the Old Town with commercial districts in an environment notable for its high concentration of breweries and bars. Facing the Rhine lies Bergplatz, which in the Middle Ages was the site of the city's castle, of which only the tower remains today. At the base of the Rheinturm Telecommunications Tower are the Gehry Buildings, a complex of offices with curved shapes and reflective surfaces. Dusseldorf also stands out for its ecological architecture, with buildings that incorporate green roofs to bring nature to the urban environment. Saarburg. It is located in the Saar River Valley, surrounded by vineyards and gently sloping hills. The castle, founded around the 10th century, gave the settlement its name and function, which grew as a small defensive commercial and administrative center. The town's most distinctive feature, however, is its urban waterfall, located right in the historic center, where the Luke River cascades down. Around the waterfall once operated mills that used the water's force for craft and industrial activities. Castle. Founded more than 1,000 years ago, it served for centuries as a residence for princes and nobles and played a significant role in German Enlightenment. Designed in the 18th century, Königsplatz was conceived as an open space for the exchange of ideas, not just for urban movement. Yet the true symbol of Kassel is Wilhelmshohe Park and its palace, the largest mountain landscape park in Europe. The Hercules Monument crowns the park's hill, symbolizing the strength and power of the city's rulers. In the area stands Lowenberg Castle, resembling a medieval fortress, although it was completed in 1801 in line with the Romantic tastes of the time. Bochum. Located in the Ruhr mining basin, it was for centuries closely tied to mining and heavy industry. Coal extraction turned into a major urban center, but after World War II, it had to reinvent itself as mines and factories gradually closed. St. Mary's Church, dating back to the 12th century, remains historically significant as one of the few surviving architectural traces of medieval Bochum. Another notable building is the Exzenterhaus, constructed on top of a former bunker and topped with a modern structure made up of several stacked volumes. Stuttgart. In a valley surrounded by hills, covered with vineyards and forests, the city spreads its neighborhoods along the sloping terrain. It was founded around the year 950 as a settlement dedicated to horse breeding, which is reflected in its name derived from Stuttengarten. It is considered the birthplace of the German automobile industry, home to the headquarters of the Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. Schlossplatz is the central square, where the Jubilee column stands at its center, erected in 1841 in honor of King William I. Devil's Bridge. Located in the state of Saxony, in Krumlau Park, it was built around 1860 as part of a landscape garden, following the Romantic tradition of blending architecture with nature. It creates the impression of being a mystical gateway to another world. According to legend, an architect made a pact with the devil, promising him the soul of the first creature to cross the bridge. Once the bridge was completed, the architect tricked the devil by sending a dog across first. Enraged, the devil vanished, though his presence was said to remain in the place. Hameln. In the north of the country, on the banks of the Weser River, this town is forever linked to the legend of the Pied Piper. The story tells that in 1284, the place was overrun by rats until a mysterious piper offered to rid the town of them in exchange for a reward. Through the sound of his flute, he lured the animals away, leading them into the Weser River, but the townspeople refused to pay him. The piper returned sometime later, playing again to enchant the town's children, who followed him out of Hameln and disappeared forever. The historic center features ornate timber-framed houses, reflecting the prosperity of the 16th and 17th centuries. Wolfsburg. Between Hanover and Berlin, it is a modern city almost entirely tied to the automotive industry. It was founded in 1938 to house workers of the Volkswagen factory and gradually evolved from a company town into a major industrial center. The Volkswagen plant in Wolfsburg, one of the largest in the world, was the starting point for the city's urban development. For decades, it served as the production hub for the Volkswagen Beetle, one of the best-selling models of the 20th century. Next to it is Autostadt, a complex dedicated to the world of automobiles, opened in the year 2000. It brings together museums, brand pavilions, green areas, and interactive spaces focused on design, mobility, and automotive history. Rather than a typical theme park, it functions as a technological and cultural showcase of Germany's automotive industry. Long before engines and steel, however, Wolfsburg Castle had already dominated the region since the 13th century, recalling the city's medieval origins. Cologne. Founded by the Romans, it was one of the main cities of the Roman province of Germania. The historic city is organized around the cathedral, combining reconstructed buildings with modern architecture. The cathedral is one of the largest Gothic churches in Europe, begun in 1248 and not completed until 1880. The Hohenzollern Bridge crosses the Rhine, linking the central station with the opposite bank and serving an important railway function. Wernigerode. On the northern slopes of the Harz Mountains, it grew as a town linked to trade and the control of routes between the plains and forested areas. It is known as the town of timber-framed houses due to the large number of such buildings preserved in its historic center. These structures are arranged along narrow streets and squares such as the Market Square. Built in the Middle Ages to oversee the town, Wernigerode Castle was remodeled in the 19th century as a Romantic-style palace. Quedlinburg. In the year 919, Henry I was proclaimed king here, making the city a key location in the origins of the Holy Roman Empire. For centuries, it was governed by religious leaders who held a rank equivalent to princes of the empire, an unusual situation in medieval Europe. The historic center preserves more than 1,000 houses built between the 14th and 19th centuries. On the outskirts lies Quedlinburg Castle, beside which a convent for women was established. Bamberg. Crossed by the Regnitz River, it is nicknamed the City of Seven Hills as it was built on 7 elevations, each crowned by a church or a castle. It was one of the few German cities that was not destroyed during World War II, preserving its medieval layout as it was centuries ago. At the center of Bamberg stands its town hall, built on an artificial island in the Regnitz River. According to legend, the clergy refused to give land for its construction, so the citizens created an artificial island. Situated atop one of the 7 hills, Altenburg Castle served as a refuge for the population and later as a secondary residence for the bishops. It represents the classic model of a medieval castle, with sturdy walls, an imposing keep, and a drawbridge. Trier. Very close to the border with Luxembourg, its location in the Moselle Valley has supported trade and viticulture since ancient times. It is considered the oldest city in Germany, with around 2,000 years of documented history dating back to Roman times. For a period, it served as a residence for Roman emperors, and in the 4th century, figures such as Constantine the Great lived here. The Porta Nigra is the city's main symbol and ranks among the best preserved Roman monuments in Europe. Regensburg. Along the Danube River, it stands at a strategic point on European routes since ancient times. For centuries, it was the permanent seat of the imperial diet of the Holy Roman Empire, meaning that political matters affecting much of Central Europe were debated here. St. Peter's Cathedral in Regensburg began construction in the 13th century and continued for several centuries, resulting in a highly vertical structure with twin towers. In the Old Town, Gothic churches, medieval towers, and patrician houses dominate, reflecting the wealth the city achieved during its peak. At the northern edge of the historic center lies the stone bridge, dating from the 12th century, one of the great engineering works of medieval Europe. Dinkelsbühl. Its inclusion on the Romantic Road has made it one of the most visited destinations in southern Germany. Its origins date back to the 8th century, though it gained importance in the 13th century when it became a free imperial city. Inside, it features cobblestone streets, quiet squares, and buildings that reflect different periods, from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. It preserves much of its original walls and defensive towers, which can still be explored and help illustrate its medieval defense system. Lake Chiemsee. Affectionately known as the Sea of Bavaria, it is the largest lake in this German region and its idyllic destination in Europe. Its golden age began in 1873, when King Ludwig II of Bavaria purchased the island to prevent its trees from being cut down and to carry out an ambitious project. He built Herrenchiemsee Palace, an exact replica of the Palace of Versailles, as a tribute to Louis XIV of France, whom he admired. On another smaller island stands a Benedictine convent founded in the year 782, which remains active today. It forms a maze of flower gardens and artist workshops with a spiritual and bohemian atmosphere that contrast with the opulence of its neighboring island. Hohenschwangau Castle. Very close to Neuschwanstein Castle in the Allgäu region, it seems to emerge from a Germanic fairy tale. The original castle, known as Schwanstein, lay in ruins when Prince Maximilian II of Bavaria acquired and restored it in 1832. Lake Alpsee lies right beside it, at the foot of the Alps, in a setting of forests and mountains. It is said that King Ludwig II was an excellent swimmer and spent hours bathing in these icy waters, even at night. Weimar. In eastern Germany, in the state of Thuringia, it is a relatively small city with immense cultural and historical importance. After World War I, Germany chose it as the place to draft its first democratic constitution. Figures such as Goethe and Schiller lived and worked here, shaping German literature with their works. Weimar Palace served as a cultural center where artists were supported and ideas were exchanged, influencing the country's intellectual circles. Bonn. Located in North Rhine-Westphalia, it began as a Roman settlement and grew into a city during the Middle Ages. Between 1949 and 1990, after World War II, it was selected as the provisional capital of West Germany. In Münsterplatz stands a statue of Ludwig van Beethoven, honoring the composer born here in 1770. In spring, usually between late March and mid-April, several central streets are transformed by the blooming of Japanese cherry trees. Across from Bonn, and on the right bank of the Rhine, stands Drachenfels Castle, accessible by Rack Railway. Bernkastel Kues. It originated as two separate towns on opposite banks of the Moselle River. Its transformation was shaped by viticulture, which for centuries influenced both its economic and urban development. The surrounding hills are covered with vineyards planted on very steep slopes. In the old town of Bernkastel Kues, timber-framed houses dominate, accompanied by irregular squares adapted to the terrain. Eustom Island. In the Baltic Sea between Germany and Poland, it stretches as an elongated strip of land separating the Siersen Lagoon from the open sea. Nearly 80% of its surface belongs to Germany and the rest to Poland, making it one of the few European islands shared by two countries. It is known as the Sun Island, as it records around 1,900 hours of sunshine per year, one of the highest figures in the country. It features wide sandy beaches and elegant seaside resorts with 19th century architecture. Augsburg. Throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, it became one of Europe's most prosperous cities thanks to trade and powerful families such as the Fugger. It was the setting of the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, a key agreement that established coexistence between Catholics and Protestants in the Holy Roman Empire. In the market square, the town hall stands out, a Renaissance building restored while preserving its original design, along with St. Peter and Perlac Church. Streets in the city center are lined with colorful facades, many showing Renaissance and Baroque influences. Lüneburg. Southeast of Hamburg, near the Elbe River, its medieval origins are linked to salt deposits. In the 19th century, the decline of salt production reduced its economic importance, but helped preserve much of its historical heritage. Lüneburg suffered little bombing during World War II, allowing its historic center to remain largely intact to this day. It is one of the best preserved in Germany, with numerous red brick houses reflecting the prosperity of the Hanseatic era. Pottenstein. In the region known as the Franconian Switzerland, this small town is located among narrow valleys, forest, and karst rock formations. At the center of the village stand timber-framed houses with red beams. Tuchersfeld is a hamlet within a small municipality with houses clustered at the foot of two large rock formations. Wismar. Facing the Baltic Sea, it developed as a port city connected to northern European maritime trade. During the Middle Ages, its wealth was reflected in the construction of monumental churches and brick civic buildings. The historic center preserves a medieval layout, with streets linking the harbor to the rest of the city. St. Mary's Church stands out, having suffered severe damage during the bombings of 1945, yet still retaining its imposing bell tower. Meissen. In Saxony, along the Elbe River and northwest of Dresden, this city was founded in the year 1929 by King Henry I as a defensive fortress. It gained international fame with the creation of the first European porcelain in 1710, turning it into a highly prestigious craft center. The historic district stretches over a hill with narrow and steep streets, many of them rebuilt after World War II. Next to the castle stands Meissen Cathedral, dedicated to St. John and St. Donatus, forming a remarkable monumental complex. Darmstadt. It gained prominence as the residence of the Grand Dukes of Hesse and as a cultural and scientific center, especially from the 19th century onward. Although its roots are medieval, its major growth came when it became the seat of the House of Hesse, an influential European dynasty. Even though much of its original heritage was lost during World War II, several areas have been restored to reflect its ducal past. The Russian chapel, built between 1897 and 1899, was commissioned by Tsar Nicholas II, with the design inspired by Russian Orthodox churches. Just a short walk away stands the Wedding Tower, inaugurated in 1908 as a symbol of the marriage of Grand Duke Ernst Ludwig of Hesse. Brunswick. It reached its peak in the 12th century under the rule of Henry the Lion, who turned it into one of the most influential cities in the north of the country. Despite not being a coastal city, it secured a prominent position within the vast commercial network of Northern Europe. The historic center includes Dankwarder Castle, the cathedral, and several buildings that reflect the city's ducal past. St. Blasius Cathedral was conceived both as a place of worship and as a dynastic burial site. Wittenberg. In the 16th century, it became an intellectual and religious center as the main hub of the Protestant Reformation led by Martin Luther. In 1517, Martin Luther made his 95 Thesis public on the door of the castle church, initiating a major religious transformation in Europe. Many buildings and sites are linked to the Reformation, including the market square, homes, churches, and academic institutions. Dillenburg. It developed around a castle built in the late 12th century by the Counts of Nassau in what is now the state of Hesse. Timber-framed houses from the 16th and 17th centuries have been preserved, painted in white or cream tones. In the surrounding area, forest and rolling hills dominate the landscape, crossed by hiking trails. Essen. It was one of Europe's main industrial centers and the seat of the Krupp Empire, crucial to Germany's metallurgical production. The city combines modern districts, repurposed industrial complexes, and extensive green spaces. For centuries, it was an important religious center, but its major expansion came in the 19th century with industrialization, particularly driven by the Krupp family. It is recognized as one of Europe's green cities for its efforts to transform former industrial sites into parks, bike paths, and natural areas. Mannheim. It is known for its grid-like urban layout, uncommon among German cities, and for its industrial, academic, and cultural character. It gained prominence as the residence of the Electors Palatine, who promoted the construction of grand Baroque buildings. One of the first practical automobiles in history was driven here in 1886, developed by Carl Benz. The city's symbol is the water tower, built in 1889, which originally functioned as part of the water supply system. Furtwangen. In southern Germany, in the Franconian region, it is set within a landscape of gentle hills and farmland, far from major cities. The town center is organized around St. John's Church, whose origins trace back to a Benedictine monastery from the 9th century. Its streets largely retain their stone paving, made up of irregular medieval cobblestones. Saarbrücken. Very close to the French border, it grew as a point of contact between the Germanic and French worlds. That blend is evident in its architecture, cuisine, and everyday life. From the 19th century onward, coal and iron extraction turned the region into one of the Western Germany's major industrial centers. After the two world wars, it held a unique political status and was not fully integrated into the Federal Republic of Germany until 1957. Miltenberg. This town is located in the state of Bavaria, along the main river, nestled between forested hills and the Odenwald Range. It is known as the Pearl of the Main due to the harmony of its architectural ensemble along the river. Its historic center preserves an exceptional level of authenticity, allowing a clear view of architecture and urban design from early modern Germany. Bad Wimpfen. Its old town sits in an elevated position, with towers, walls, and medieval houses. The surrounding landscape combines vineyards, gentle hills, and the course of the Neckar River. During the Middle Ages, it became a free imperial city, and over time its saline waters began to be used for therapeutic purposes. Sylvenstein Lake. In southern Bavaria, near the Austrian border, it stretches along the valley of the Isar River, surrounded by the first rises of the Alps. It was formed between 1954 and 1959 with the construction of a dam that flooded part of the former valley. Since then, it has served functions related to water regulation, energy production, and supply. Despite being artificial, the lake blends visually into the alpine landscape, with its turquoise waters and irregular shape giving it the appearance of a natural lake. Neckargemünd. On the banks where the Neckar and Isens River meet, this town is surrounded by forest-covered hills. It was part of the territory of the Palatinate of the Rhine, one of the most influential regions in southwestern Germany during the medieval period. It lies in a natural setting near Heidelberg, highly valued for relaxation and outdoor activities. Havelberg. This town was founded by Emperor Otto I in the year 1946, with the aim of strengthening control over the Slavic territories in the region. It is built across several islands and slightly elevated land between the branches of the Havel River. For centuries, water served as the main route of communication, shaping its economy as well as the layout of its buildings and streets. Externstein. Within the Teutoburg Forest, it is a group of rock pillars that rise abruptly from the surrounding landscape. Their formation began tens of millions of years ago, shaped by geological processes and the action of wind, water, and temperature changes. Steps and carved relief can be found in the rock, some dating back to medieval times, showing that the site was used for centuries for religious and symbolic purposes. Wiesbaden. As the capital of the state of Hesse, This city experienced its great splendor in the 19th century, when it became a spa destination for emperors and aristocrats. Among its landmarks is the Markirch, which dominates the market square with its striking neo-Gothic silhouette. It was built between 1853 and 1862 as a Protestant church, designed by architect Karl Boos, using red brick, an unusual material for the region. Meanwhile, the Kurhaus is an elegant neoclassical building designed as a leisure and spa center, which for years served as a meeting place for European high society. Speyer. This city dates back to Roman times and began to gain importance with the construction of its cathedral in the year 1030. It is one of the largest Romanesque churches in Europe and is a burial site for emperors. Despite damage and reconstructions over the centuries, it retains much of its original design and remains a key historical and architectural landmark. Mainz. In the state of Rhineland-Palatinate, it was founded as a Roman camp, becoming one of the empire's main military strongholds. It is the birthplace of Johannes Gutenberg, who around 1450 invented the movable type printing press, a breakthrough that transformed the spread of knowledge. The historic center is organized around St. Martin's Cathedral, an important example of German Romanesque architecture. Near the cathedral stands Gutenberg Museum, dedicated to the inventor. After the fall of Rome, Mainz developed into a bishopric, and later an archbishopric, gaining significant influence during the Middle Ages. Karlsruhe. Near the border with France, it was founded in 1715 to create a new capital from scratch, designed according to rational and Enlightenment ideals. In the market square stands the Stadtkirche, the city's main church, with a columned facade inspired by classical temples. The Post Gallery was originally conceived as a postal building and now functions as a shopping and service center. Karlsruhe Palace was built as the symbolic center of the new city, extending northward and connecting with the urban area. Flensburg. Located along the Flensburg Fjord, it has a look more reminiscent of Scandinavian landscapes than the rest of Germany. It has a strong German-Danish identity, with both German and Danish spoken, a cultural blend visible in everyday life. Between 1460 and 1864, it was one of the main ports of the Kingdom of Denmark, and after World War II, it served as the seat of the last government of the Third Reich. In the 18th century, sugarcane from the Danish West Indies arrived here for refining, generating wealth for local merchant families. Stralsund. Situated on the Baltic Sea and facing the island of Rügen, it stands out for its brick Gothic architecture. After the 30 Years' War in 1648, it became part of the Kingdom of Sweden for 150 years. This period left marks on its administration, architecture, and urban organization. Even today, Stralsund maintains cultural ties with the Scandinavian country. Ibse Lake. It is located in southern Bavaria, at the foot of the Zugspitze Massif and near the town of Granau. It formed around 3,700 years ago as a result of a massive rock slide from the slopes of the Zugspitze, which blocked the valley and created several basins of water. This origin explains the presence of small islands and the lake's irregular shape with both deep and shallow areas. Its distinctive turquoise color is due to the purity of its waters and the mineral composition of the lake bed, which reflects light in a unique way. Others. As one of Europe's major countries, and the most populous if Russia is excluded, Germany offers many other places worth mentioning. Glucksburg Castle, near the Danish border and surrounded by water, built in 1587 in Renaissance style. Hohenwald Castle, set atop an ancient volcanic cone near the city of Singen, destroyed in 1801 by order of Napoleon. Braunfels Castle, perched on a rocky hill in the town of Braunfels, erected in the 12th century as a stronghold of the Count of Solms. Gobweinstein, a small town in the south of the country, known for its Basilica of the Holy Trinity, which made it an important pilgrimage site in the 18th century. Naumburg, a city especially renowned for its Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul, considered one of the great works of German Gothic architecture. Chemnitz, one of the main centers of the German Industrial Revolution, known as the Saxon Manchester. Bautzen, located along the Spree River, with numerous medieval towers that have earned it the nickname, the City of Towers. Lemgo, within the historic city of Lippe, featuring many houses and buildings from the 16th century. Lake Walchen, in southern Bavaria, on the edge of the Alps near Munich, one of the deepest and clearest lakes of the country. Blautop, a spring where water emerges from deep caves after traveling long distances beneath limestone rock. Marienburg Castle, south of Hanover, built between 1858 and 1867 by order of King George V as a summer residence and a gift for his wife. Gemundener Maar, a volcanic crater in the Eifel region, formed by a phreatic explosion around 20,000 years ago. Limburg, a city in the state of Hesse, with St. George Cathedral standing on a rock rising above the town. The town of Ittlingen, one of the main gateways to the Black Forest. Beaverstein Palace, in the state of Saxony, located on a plain overlooking the Freiburger Mulde River Valley. Johannesburg Castle, in the city of Oschwamberg, a Renaissance residence built between 1605 and 1614. Sigmaringen, a town located along the Danube River and surrounded by the gentle hills of the Swabian Jura. Liechtenstein Castle, set on a cliff and built in 1840, designed from the outset as a scenic residence rather than a defensive structure. Celle, a city dating back to the 13th century, developed as a ducal residence of the Principality of Lüneburg. Banau, a village located on a bend of the Neckar River. Plön, a small town situated in the heart of the Holstein Lake District, surrounded by more than a dozen bodies of water. Malin, encircled by the lakes of the Laurenburg Lakes National Park. Biebenhausen, a small settlement on the edge of Schombuch Forest. The Girelay Suspension Bridge, spanning a wooded valley between the towns of Moorsdorf and Salzburg, inaugurated in 2015. Drakensberg Castle, set on a hill in the Siebengebirge Range overlooking the Rhine River. Lorchhausen, a village facing the Rhine, located in a very narrow strip between the river and the hillside. Lake Starnberg, a popular summer destination since the 19th century for the German aristocracy and bourgeoisie. The Teufelsmauer, north of the Harz Mountains, an elongated rock formation that cuts through the landscape like a fragmented natural wall. Between rivers that hold ancient legends and cities that rose stronger than before, Germany bids us farewell with its living history and the certainty that it is not goodbye, but a pause. Bis bald, Deutschland.